What's up, everybody? Shawn here with another Live to Roll Live. We are back this week celebrating and just talking about the ADA. Today is the anniversary of the signing of the ADA, July 26th, 1990 was when it was signed. So, it kind of falls right on our show date, so it worked out. But we'll do some quick intros and then get into some stuff. So I am Shawn, C5, C6 quadriplegic from a snowboarding accident 18 years ago. Tom, you want to take it?
What's up, everybody? I'm over here fussing with my hat. Sorry about that. I'm Tom Conaway, C5, C6 quadriplegic. I've been injured going on 25 years now. And yeah, super stoked to be talking about the American Disability Act and what that means and what we need to do to protect our future as disabled individuals here in America. So in lieu of that, let's toss on over to Bobby.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back. Glad you can join us. And after we introduce our guest, we got to get with our sponsor because I always love to remind Shawn, just in
We will
case, you
get
know.
it.
It's a running joke now, but no. Hey,
I
thanks
know,
for
I'm back.
joining us again. And I'm Bobby Rohan. I'm a C5, C6. I've been hurt 33 years, cycling accident, living in Orange County, California. And let's absolutely move it over to someone way better than I am and much prettier, much more handsome, and a great all around guy, good friend of mine, Luis.
Hey everybody, how you doing? It's really great to see everybody here on the 32nd anniversary of the ADA. My name is Luis. I've been injured for 42 years. I was injured in an industrial accident. I was ejected from an oil rig, so I went a long way and went splat. So it's great to be here with everybody and join everybody. And just like everybody else, I'm going to promote mobility professionals. Awesome
Awesome.
people, known them a long time, and just recently I happened to be at their offices. They gave me the full tour of the place, and they're awesome people.
Yeah, so thank you, Luis, for starting that off. But we will thank our sponsors, Mobility Professionals and Urology Professionals. Mobility Professionals is a mobility specialist here in Southern California. So if you're in the Southern California area, need a wheelchair, yeah, commode chair, anything like that, any type of adaptive device, give them a call. Information is down below. And Urology Professionals is their sister company, and they're a national company. So anywhere in the U.S., if you're looking for catheter supplies, give them a call. They'll take care of insurance and everything. And like Louise said, they're good people. I saw them at the Rolettes Experience on Friday. They were there sponsoring that. Hung out with some of the girls that work for them there, and then on Saturday at our Triumph Foundation big fundraiser casino night, I was there with some of the mobility professional guys, urology professional people as well. They were there supporting both, and they're just they're out here just supporting our community. So good people and good companies. So thank you.
We love our sponsors. Thank you
Yeah, we
guys. It was
do.
really great to see Dean and the crew this weekend.
Yeah, it
And
was.
shout
Dean was a
out, I was just gonna say shout out the Triumph Foundation too. They hosted a little casino night gala to do some fundraising for their foundation, and just gotta shout it out. The fundraising doesn't have to stop at the party; it can keep on going.
They
So
are
you're
still taking
feeling,
donations.
like you got a little extra change in your pocket, you want to toss it somewhere where it's going to go to individuals that need it, programs that are doing meaningful things for the disabled community, particularly the spinal cord injured community out here in Southern California. Go and check out Triumph Foundation, the website. We'll make sure to put the link in the
Yeah, I will put the link in
chat
there. I should have
description.
done that before. But yeah, we are
Oh, you're
all a
good.
part of that and support. And
Yeah,
but
no, I
yeah,
mean,
so
honestly,
all right,
like
Matt.
they helped change my life, when I moved out and it was down here in Southern California. Like I was living, but I was just surviving. I wasn't really thriving until I, got a little bit more hooked up with the community down here. And that was all thanks to the Triumph Foundation, and Andrew and the crew, and guys like Bobby, Shawn, and Lewis. who welcomed me with open arms. It
Yeah, man,
was
that's what it's about, and that's what
yeah,
without like early pioneers like Judy Human and start helping getting the ADA and stuff going, and even before that, doing movements in like the '70s and '80s and stuff. We would not have foundations and stuff like this, and crazy things like the Rolettes experience that happened this weekend. I went and just checked it out a little bit and met, Brianna and some of the girls were there. The Vicky and Ashley were out. There was 250 girls from 15 different countries there. I mean, that's just like incredible. Like all girls with disabilities, all in wheelchairs, all like it's just I don't know, stuff like that's crazy. So it's cool.
Well,
It's cool we
not
have stuff like that.
more, more than crazy. It's just it shows that with social media these days and the outreach and what one person and a group of ladies can touch so many other ladies out there and feel empowered to get out and be themselves just like us. And I mean, I know that throughout history it has always been known that yeah, men are in numbers when it comes to spinal cord injury, and we've been paved, we get all that treatment, and women are, oh, you poor thing. I mean, we sort of get that, but they get it 10 times worse. And it's
yeah,
not that case. They are still a person. They are still out there rocking and being beautiful and kicking ass. And it's great that they're finally feeling empowered all to get together and say, hey, you know, this is us. And it's don't look at the chair, look at the person.
Yeah, and
yeah,
the only reason why there was only 250 was because that was like the max capacity they could fit at the hotel with rooms and with space and everything they have. So that's just it's incredible.
More reason for them to call the fire marshal and get a bunch of firemen down there.
well,
Right.
let's shift it on over. The reason public spaces like the hotel are even accommodating to that many number of people in chairs, which is still like a pretty astounding number. I'm sure that they had to book some accommodations in some surrounding hotels to find accessible rooms for everybody, even if
Yeah.
they were able to, because there's a lack. But the reason that spaces like hotels are mandated to have a certain number of accessible rooms with roll-in showers and accommodating services is because of the American Disabilities Act. And just not going to try to yawn on too much here, but I think it's important. History is so important. And it kind of started with the Civil Rights Act, which was
Yep.
passed in 1964, which was just uh, the end to segregation and the end to discrimination against not only different minorities, but individuals of different sex and gender, or gender identifying, or orientation, or minority race. Otherwise, it was laws to protect individuals in this sense. Now, individuals with disabilities were not necessarily recognized or considered a minority at that time. That wasn't until 1973 when the Rehabilitation Act, and particularly Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, was to extend civil rights to individuals with disabilities. And this was primarily to protect individuals in the workplace from being discriminated against. And it was just laws codifying things to allow action to be taken against corporations that were discriminating against individuals in this sense, which was basically every corporation at the time, because this group of individuals weren't really considered equal or normal, and in many senses still are not to this day. But we'll talk about that later. Now that was just to, like I said, recognize this group of individuals and protect certain rights, but not all of their rights. Um, Anybody living before 1990 with a disability could tell you that it was really crazy times in terms of accommodations, and that there weren't really any, because there were no legal mandates for any business, any transportation company, any even federally publicly subsidized business, organization, service was legally mandated to accommodate service individuals with disabilities. But that all changed. There was lots of lobbying done, lots of protesting done by really, really amazing groups of individuals for a few decades. And it was a lot of work, and it was very constant, and it was something that people had to live and breathe and dedicate their lives to for decades to instigate this change. And it did not come about and get signed into law until July 26th, 1990. And that law that was signed in was the Americans with Disabilities Act. Um, and it was uh, act that includes 5 titles to protect individuals with disabilities in employment, in public services, including public transportation, any state, locally, or federally subsidized service. And again, I speak slightly out of turn there. It's all federally subsidized services. This is like federal law, but a lot of these do extend and protect, um, you know, individuals within our states as well, and um, force state legislature to include these titles within their own lawmaking. Um, so it's first being employment, second being public entities like public transportation, third being public accommodations, commercial facilities like hotels, any federal building that's in service is mandated, and then any business that's in service to the public. Um, Fourth being telecommunications, that has also been extended to any communication device, um, cell phone, computer, or otherwise. Um, and that's recently, we've talked about it in just the last few weeks, but has been very, very recently more heavily considered, creating accommodations in technology and the tools we use to communicate these days. And then the last title is to just protect our right to protect these provisions and to protest further in the future to ensure that our rights are protected, and whatever changes need to be made or maintained in the future will. And the last title is just a protection of those rights to protest and uh, represent ourselves as a minority. So I'm going to stop talking now. That's just a very rough breakdown of the history and the details of it. Those are the nuances of it. And now I want to talk about some of these nuances because as I heard this in, like I think it was Crip Camp or another video or a podcast listening to it. The American Disabilities Act should be thought of as a floor, not a ceiling, meaning this is a base for us to build off of. This is the very the simplest, basic accommodations and fair treatment that can be made to, individuals with disabilities living in the United States. And that is by no means where, like, should be the standard or where things should be kept. Um, Lewis and Bobby, and as individuals who were around, right around when, dealing with your disability for the first time, right around when ADA was just barely becoming a thing or not even a thing. Um, what was your experience? How has your experience been? How is it compared to today?
Go ahead, Bobby.
Actually, I can start with this, and you're going to have to touch on this because I was only heard for a very short time before that signing. And I think Kelly had it just right. He said it just perfectly that even once the ADA was passed in the 90s, they weren't sure how to enforce it. And I think that was great, Kelly, and what you said, and absolutely right. And I think, and I know we had a women's episode a couple weeks ago where the boys got to crash with Brianna. We had a lot of fun, and we had a discussion about it. And and I know where Tom feels frustrated. That floor is still barely even built. We don't even have frames. We don't have a roof. And in one thing, in something that was said that uh, from a good friend of mine who is an ADA lawyer and good part of our Triumph Foundation family, he said, since 1990, how many times has the law been changed?
None, yeah.
0 times. Sorry, that's my quad zero, but that is 0 times. And so, yeah, and I can see, we need to be frustrated. We need to have more accessibility. We need to have an understanding, not just the Americans Disability Act when you say ADA. And I know our good friend Andrew said, never even heard of it. And we need to have this global. And I'm sure each country, like Kelly was telling or mentioned, that I'm sure they have similar laws, and I hope so, but we need it global. We didn't know when we get on a plane and we go to the UK that there is something in place that it's going to be accessible. It is pretty frustrating out there. I knew it for a very short time. I just kind of accepted it. If I can't get into a building, oh well. If I couldn't have public transportation, I just sat at home. You know, I didn't think it was a big deal until I really started, you know, getting out there more and more. And then you finally realize, holy crap, even to this day, I mentioned that I finally got so upset. I'm not a person that wants to go out and get a lawyer and fight and because I am just not a lawyer kind of guy and wanting to go to court. There's one thing that I have always said: me and getting into the law and fighting are just something I just never took a part of. I just rather it happen, should just happen. But one day when I was stuck in the bathroom for a good 20 minutes at the DMV because they built some funk and it was old. I mean, this thing had to be built before 1990, and it was a big metal pipe around the sink, and it was blocking the door. That when I had to pull the door towards me, it was either I had to be in front of the door or behind the pipe of the sink, and I could like barely touch with my knuckle the door handle. So I'm like, this is crazy. So then I got to the door, went sideways, opened it up a crack. I'm like, excuse me, anybody out there? And it's so loud in the DMV, nobody's like hearing me. 20 minutes until finally somebody opened the door, like, you need help? And I felt this big, very tiny. And I'm like, you know what? This needs to change. And I went and found an ADA lawyer, and we said, let's fight to get this changed. And he's like, well, that's a good fight too, because now you're dealing with a federal part. It's like it's a state. So now we're going to be fighting the state because DMV is the state, not a business owner. So now we got a fight on our hand. I mean, it wasn't much of a fight. He sends letters, that all we're asking is for change. I'm not asking for a dime. We just need change. And I won my case a couple of weeks ago, and we signed that they have, and it sucks, but it is California, that they get 3 years to change it, and 5 years to. And I didn't even know, but when they went out there, they said, "Did you know the parking lot's not even accessible? That the sidewalks need to be, have clear cut pathways?" And I'm like, "No, I was just stuck in the bathroom." And he goes, "No, we need to change this all." So they get 5 years for the parking lot and 3 years for the bathroom. It's something.
Crazy.
It sucks. Can't happen tomorrow. And luckily, I have to look at my license the next time I have to go and renew my, license and take a picture. But, hopefully it'll be done.
All
Bobby,
right.
just to add on to that, I want to
Yes.
say thank you from me to you. Thank you. A week and a half ago, I had to go to the DMV. I was getting an additional endorsement for my license, and I had to go in and fill out the application, pay the bill for it, go take two tests, go back, make sure that everything was right for the tests, get the paperwork, go back, get the photograph taken because they got to issue a new license with the additional endorsements and all that, and then process the paperwork at the end and leave. I was in and out in less than an hour for all of that. And that's because they saw me with a disability and they said, no, you go to the front of the line for everything. Every single line I had to go to, it's the same DMV that Shawn and I go to. Beautiful, lots of spaces, brand new DMV that's fully accessible in every way. And
Boo, the DMV
that's because
sucks.
you that's because you did that.
No, and I did get all that treatment when I was out there. I got the go to the front of the line, even though this is an older one, but I got all that treatment. And everyone's looking at me and they're like, no, come here, gotcha. Come to this lower table, no problem. Boom, boom, boom. All my other little stuff, that took 20 minutes because I was trying to get the new California where you have to turn in so you can travel, I guess.
Yes.
And a couple of
Just
years ago,
Real
and so
ID.
once yeah, that took 20 minutes. And then going to the bathroom took another additional, 25 minutes. And I'm just like, and a humiliation leaving the DMV.
so
Yeah.
two things, just to jump in real quick, because I do want to like make people aware of their rights, like as we kind of talk about these experiences and like parts of this act, and what Bobby's talking about, and we're talking about here is if there's any business, this particular one, the DMV, is like a federal service. Like they are extra accountable because of that. But even a business like a restaurant that's in service to the public, um, if you go in and their bathroom isn't accommodating or the width of the door isn't accommodating, and you make a reasonable request for an accommodation, they are liable to a certain degree. What the judge will then do, generally, is like they'll look at the restaurant situation. If they can like afford to like do this accommodation reasonably without putting too much financial burden on the business, then they can then be mandated to do so. If it is a small business, and there are certain like mark like they have to have so many employees, make so much money to like
Right.
fall into this like certain in service to the public deal, but there is some protection for the business as well, because I do think some people do make unreasonable accommodations.
Oh,
Like
absolutely.
I'm, sorry, like I wish the world was perfect, but it's not. And we have to be fair and reasonable to everybody in these instances. Every individual with a disability does have a right to fair and reasonable accommodations. But if it is a building that was built before a certain time and things were taken into consideration and the business does not have the means to accommodate, then I understand that. And if there's some way to, mitigate that situation and, either I take my business somewhere else or, find some other solution, I think that's fair and that is reasonable. But it is everybody's right to
And it
request that.
also, yeah, and also has to be structural. So if the place can accommodate structure wise, then yeah, then they can be exempt from it. And kind of like an elevator or a wider door, and they're like, there's no way that wider door can come in here because of the
Yeah.
framing of this old building, and you'd have to tear down this whole building, and that's part of it. And so yeah, and it's easy for especially smaller business to. There was a place that I used to like to go for lunch that had great steak sandwiches, and bathroom, got in, toilet, no problem, wash hands, got it. Uh, to dry my hands, the paper towel was way high, and it's like, come on, so rolled out and just said, hey, can I talk to the manager or owner? He's like, is everything okay? I just said, everything's great. It just, last thing, I just can't reach that, to dry my hands after, I want washing my hands. And he's like, oh. And next time I visit, still nothing done. And I went back and I just said, this is my second request. I'm just asking friendly. I like to dry my hands just like everybody else. And it's probably not too hard. It will fit right there. And he goes, you're right. You did tell me, and I'm sorry. And the third time I went, it was changed, being polite. So,
And
there are ways to get around that too.
I've never like encountered a business or like a business owner that like I was polite to, respectful to, and honest about my situation, and that whatever that situation was, like they did whatever they could to either like accommodate me, in whatever way that was. Like there's this pizza place me and my friends tried to go to, and like they did it that it was only access for kids like on the second story. The bottom was like a bar, and I was like 18. I wasn't 21 yet, and I was like, "Yo, do you guys have an elevator to get me up there?" They're like, "No." Then I'm like, "All right, can we have a table in the corner? We'll just chill." They're like, "By law, like we can't." Like they're like, "If we could, we would." Like I want to. It's like I feel so bad telling you no, but like we legally could get in trouble and lose our license to do business. And I was like, "All right, that's fair." And dude, the homie was like, "Let me help you guys out." He gave us 2 free pizzas, and there was a park across the street. He was like, "Yo," he's like, "take some pie, like you guys go sit across, like have some pizza in the park," and that was cool, and that was super nice. There was more than he had to do, but in those instances, like I do think it's fair. Like if you can just like be kind and respectful, and try to come to some accommodation, but
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I do think there is also some accountability for like new businesses, and that is where there is some laws in place that if there is a new corporation and they do have the means and the ability to pr- create new accommodations, because of you know just the size of their business or whatever, they're buying an older building. They are then mandated to make some of those accommodations. Now, that only extends to certain businesses and not to one of, I think, the biggest business that affects individuals is housing. Now, unfortunately, it's a business. It's a capitalist residential marketplace, and disabled individuals aren't generally considered. Any new commercial residence built after 1969 is mandated to have certain accommodations.
Yes.
There, that's at least for like apartments and stuff. That's the law. Those accommodations, at least for a quadriplegic, I argue are borderline, but they are there. And there's usually at least a few units within like an apartment complex or a housing complex that might have a number of small units, on a piece of property or something. Well, generally they're required a certain level of accommodation. A certain number of the units have to be accessible, and that is great. Um, there's a lot of housing built pre 1969. My particular unit, my apartment, is built like early 1960s and is pre ADA. Even so, I am in an ADA unit because this used to be part of the student housing for the college that I attended. It's not anymore, it's just a privately owned residence. But they, being a university, built a few ADA rooms. Well, they technically aren't ADA, but they are now because they were built before ADA. But the thing is like I've asked them, the rest of the property not accessible at all. Like not even a little bit accessible. I can't access the recreation area. I can't access the gym. I can't access the pool area. I can't access any other building outside of my own, and my own building only because I'm a super quad and I got mad skills. But it's hard. It's physically hard on me, and has been, and is. And I've asked the first building owners for some reasonable accommodations. None were made outside of like what my dad did. They did put a handle on one door for me, um, but it compromised the security because you could then overcome the security using the handle. So it was like a rough accommodation and one that isn't meaningful. They sold the building. I asked the new building management at the time, right at the beginning, "Hey, you guys are doing some renovations and stuff," and they were. "Can you maybe do a few of these accommodations?" They started to do a few, but in the midst of COVID hitting, they went belly up and sold the building without finishing any of the accessible accommodations. And then the new owners, Six Star Properties, shout out, you jerks. Um, they refuse to do any accommodations. Now, the Fair Housing Act does not extend the American Disabilities Act is not extended to fair housing. Now, fair housing does have some entitlements for individuals with disabilities, but not meaningful fair protection in that you are allowed to request reasonable and fair accommodations, but even though your building or your home might be owned by $100 million corporation, that is well within their means to provide some fair and reasonable accommodations, they're not legally obligated to. They can legally pass along the cost to you, saying you can make any fair accommodations, but we don't have to pay for it. Now, I think that can be fair to an extent. Maybe if there's like, a landlord who owns like one property and doesn't have the means to provide significant modification to the home. But again, we're talking about a business. We're talking about like a commodity of this like building that's shuffled around between corporations, and the residents and the tenants, particularly the disabled individuals, I don't think are fairly treated. So this is just kind of a segue into the failings of the ADA, in that there is extension to certain public services, restaurants, hotels, any kind of business like mall, whatever it is, like, and you are protected in requesting accommodations even to small businesses, to a certain level. But that does not extend to housing, which is, the largest, financial market currently affecting our economy, and, has the most impact because it's literally a roof over your head for individuals. And I would argue that there's advantage being taken, not just to the general public, but particularly individuals with disabilities, because there aren't fair and reasonable accommodations in 95% of the public housing available to individuals. Um, if they do have ADA units, they are not saved for disabled individuals. They are rented out to everybody, which is not fair. Because when a disabled, you know, renter comes requesting, they don't have anything available. Now, again, I don't know if there's a simple solution. I'm not saying they should hold this thing forever, but there is a list of, people with disabilities that need housing 8 years long.
Yeah.
And it's like a weird way to say it, but that's what they tell you when you sign up. Is like, the list, the waiting list is 8 years. And I'm sorry, but some of these corporations that own these, massive, real estate properties should be held accountable. They should be mandated, even if it's at a cost to them. And, it cuts into, small profit margin that is so freaking huge. Like, there are changes, there are protections that could be put in place to better protect disabled individuals, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah,
You
An
know, I
man.
did a
example.
lot of.
That's,
I'm
Go ahead.
Luis. I know you have an example, but obviously, I had a couple years. Let's hear about your experience because you had a couple years before I did, and so you actually know this a lot better than all of us.
Well, by the time the ADA was passed in '90, I was already into my 10th year of being paralyzed, and even prior to my injury, I had an uncle who was severely CP, cerebral palsy, and so I had an awareness of disability since I was a little kid, and I remember the protests of people getting out of their wheelchairs, climbing up the stairs of the Congress building in Washington, D.C. I remember on the news seeing the live reports of the people in wheelchairs taking over the office in San Francisco, and they'd show that on the news.
Yeah, it was the
Back in
current.
school, they would roll the televisions into our classroom to watch, you know, uh, the president being shot, Martin Luther King being shot, the Apollo mission, and these protests, including the disability protests. We would watch this on TV in school. And it was a big deal, to see people with disabilities doing this kind of thing. And it changed the language within our own community. It changed society at large, because people were starting to realize that, hey, these people want lives. They're not
And
getting everything that everybody else in society gets, and they want this, and they're willing to fight for it.
what Lewis is talking about too is like there were groups of disabled individuals that would do these, like, I think they were called curb crawls, where they would go to
Yes.
like government buildings, throw themselves out of their wheelchair onto the ground, and crawl up the steps to try to get into the government building. What they're like, someone meet them at the top of their chair or not, but to just be a nuisance and get in the way of the senators and the government officials who are then walking in at the time and having to walk
Yeah.
over these disabled people who are like, literally crawling and fighting for these accommodations. But I just wanted to give some context to that story and toss it right
Yeah.
back to you.
And if
There were no
anybody hasn't watched Crip Camp, check it out on Netflix because they do show some of that stuff. They show some of the old footage from some of those things.
Crip Camp should be required homework for all of us with a disability. If you've never seen the program, this is homework. This is your, mine, Bobby's, Tom, Sean's, you watching this program. This is part of your history now. As a person with a disability, this is your history. Learn it. This is really
Absolutely.
important stuff.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
essential
Appreciate it.
to understand and learn and know this history, because I really am trying not to be political despite talking about politics, but it is up to us, despite of all the extra shit and obstacles and stuff we got to deal with at the end of the day, throughout the day, on top of all the other, everyday, life bullshit. We have to, again, still continue to fight and protect our rights, not just like protect the rights that we have from being taken away, because as crazy as that might seem, it is a real possibility that could happen. It's happening right now. It's individuals with gender identity, you know, different gender
Women.
identities and different sexes, and women.
Yeah.
Like it is a real possibility. Unless we continue to protect those rights, but not only that, fight to extend them, because there are so many failings in public spaces, be it public transportation, public housing, public access, even still in 2022, um, that is not legal, literally by definition of the law. Like, the American Disabilities Act extends to Amtrak, which is a federally subsidized transportation service. And I can
Yes.
tell you firsthand that it is not meaningfully accessible to an individual with quadriplegia. And I'm sorry, like, that should be the baseline. Like, there are individuals that
Mhm.
have further impairment than myself and need even more accommodation, and that's not a realistic possibility for them, and that is a failing of the system, and that is
Yeah.
in violation of the law,
In
and the
in,
federal
in
government
Amtrak's
should be held accountable.
to
Bottom
Amtrak's
line.
credit, they're better than the airlines.
Are
Now
they?
again,
The
air
Amtrak's not perfect. It's got a lot of issues.
Well, here's where there's some gray area. There are trains that are better than the experience that I had on the Southwest Chief, because
Yeah.
this train was built in 1970, just when the Rehabilitation Act was first being written into law, which did not extend to services like Amtrak. But again, like, awareness was being brought to accommodations and the need for, accommodations and services like this. So, like, some were made, and again, like, the conductor said my train car was built in the 1970s. I mean, if that's
Yeah.
really the case, then, and it's been in operation for 50 years, it was impressive for 1970s standards, but we're operating in 2022. And like,
Yeah.
the failings of the system, the lack of appropriation of resources to curate these changes and to bring about meaningful accommodations and accessibility. They've had more
Yeah,
than enough time. I'm sorry, 5 decades is more than enough
more
Yeah.
than
time.
enough time. But you make a great point about like when the train was built. So, like the Southwest Chief, they have different trains that were built at different times. So they have a train that was built in the 70s, one that was built in the 80s, one that was built in the 90s, and each one of those have a different level of accessibility. It's not the same on each one. I've seen that when I went from here in San Bernardino out to Albuquerque. I took two different trains. On the way there, it was terrible, and
Yeah,
then on the way back, it was a newer train that was much better.
yeah.
It made a big difference. And it got so bad on the way there that I'm actually on my phone tweeting about my experience on the Amtrak. And then sure enough, I tweeted I could get out of this train with my wheelchair and get to Albuquerque before the train does. And the conductor comes down and starts talking to me. They saw my tweet. Somebody from Amtrak told the conductor, "Hey, go talk to this guy." And he came back and explained what was going on. And I was like, "Thank you for explaining it. Now I understand."
So you got
Yeah,
to get
where
on
they
Twitter for
They
complaints.
should have mentioned that and gone through the carts and just say, here's the dealio. It's so funny. Communication goes a long way. And that even has to deal with the ADA. Communicate to me. It's kind of like with the doctors, it's kind of like with the
Yes.
buildings. Communicate. And why can't that be done? Just let me know. And that's why sometimes talking to somebody and just asking, hey, can you change it this way? Actually, I can't because blah, blah, because of structure or I wish I could, I would try, and so you have a better understanding. It just sometimes I think they just don't want to say anything. They don't want to
But
make waves or thinking we're going to make waves. But
Yeah.
obviously, communication goes a long way just with anything.
well, here's the thing. It's not where individuals invest their time and money. I mean, you're
Yeah.
beginning to see it like more in like technology companies, including like accessibility features in their software and stuff, which like are very very important to like communication. I think it's like essential to ensure that computers, all electronic devices, be kept accessible, and that's like one of the first considerations made when it comes in developing this kind of stuff, because it is requirement should be required that it's accessible for everybody. But I'm telling you, like these airlines, they are held under the same accountability as Amtrak, because they do get federal subsidies, they do get federal grants that support their stuff. Like they are so federally involved, it's not even funny. But because of that, they're again mandated to provide some accommodations. I read about news stories every day of airlines destroying wheelchairs,
Yeah,
Yeah.
putting
it's so
passengers'
common.
lives at risk, putting their health at risk, putting them in uncomfortable, dehumanizing situations. And it's because they have not been held accountable by anybody. And I mean, now they're starting to be held accountable by the individuals that do go public, the media agencies that do, publicize this stuff and bring awareness to it. But again, the government should be like, yo, we can't let you operate until you you know, reach a certain level of accessibility and accommodating services. Like, here's the standard; it has to be higher.
Yeah.
Here's some examples of you know businesses that do it. Here's where we need to get to, and if we
Airlines are
don't,
something I'm really strong on. I can give you some stuff on airlines. So the first thing is that the airport has to be ADA compliant. No way around it. The airline does not. The airlines are totally exempt from the ADA, but they have to adhere to what's called the Air Carrier Access Act, the ACAA. Those are our rights as air travelers. So when you have a problem on an airline, it's entirely different set of rules. And if you have a complaint, you have to file your complaint with the Department of Transportation.
yeah,
And when you have a problem on an airline, say they break your wheelchair, they break the wheels, and when you get off and they say, here's your wheel and it's in pieces, at that very moment, Don't get angry with the airline because they're just going to fluff you off. They're going to say, we'll get it fixed. Don't worry. Here's a card. Call this number, and we'll try and send a wheelchair to your hotel room. Don't do it. That's the first mistake. You ask for the Department of Transportation liaison administered at each airport. Every airport has one. Or they have what's called a compliance officer who's on duty during the operation hours of every airport. It's required by federal law. And you want to speak to that person in person right now. They have to come to wherever you are in the airport and take a report. And then the airline is on the hook for everything with your wheelchair. They have to get
Yeah,
it in, and they give them a certain amount of time to do it.
we're
It also
gonna
gets
do like
reported.
a whole episode on like some air travel nuances. I think when we get back, having like gone
Yes.
through it firsthand. But the point that like I still like makes me want to throw up, thinking about is where what have we been doing for the last 40 years? 50
They've
years
been sitting
when
on
in
their
terms
ass.
of developing and progressing. Like we have the technology, we have the tools, we have the engineering capacity, we have the engineers, we have the plans, we have the stuff, but nobody is held is companies accountable to bring
Money,
about
money, money.
meaningful change. And I think a lot of people do care. I think so many people do care. Now, the ones that don't care are the ones that it's going to hurt their wallets, and they just care about other stuff. And I'm sorry, but if this change would have been, if small changes would have been like made 30 or 40 years ago and we just kept making small changes over the
Mhm.
last 3 or 4 decades, then big change would have happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yo, like that's the reality. It's it is a conversation that has been had and we've continued to have for this long. So why haven't these meaningful changes been brought about? Why are there examples of cities in Europe where like their accessibility is leaps and bounds further than what we have? Are they some futuristic society, or have they just maybe dedicated the right amount of resources to bringing about those changes to create equality for everybody? Now, again, I'll just kind of get preachy here. The reason I am though is because it's a conversation we have to keep having. It's like something we have to talk about and continue to talk about on you know
We keep
louder
having it
platform and
and
a
nothing
larger
happens.
platform. Go ahead.
You're
You know,
right, Tom. We keep having the same conversation with these agencies and businesses, but nothing happens. You're right.
and it's
That's
frustrating.
something that we as a demographic have to change. We have to put ourselves collectively as a group. Well, I'm disabled. I'm handicapped. I'm this. We're having this little argument about who and what we are, and what we call ourselves, and well, I'd rather be called a gimp, or I'd rather. Hey, look, call us one thing so that the media, society, government, the culture knows who we are. We need to be a single demographic so that our 20-25% of the population actually means something, because right now it doesn't. Nobody gives a crap about us because we can't even get together and decide who and what we are. That needs to change so that when the news comes on and says, okay, the next president's going to be elected, and he's got so much of the white vote and the black vote and the Hispanic vote, and what about the disabled vote? When was the last time you heard somebody talk about the disabled vote? Almost never.
Hardly
Once in a
ever.
blue moon it'll happen, but almost never. But we make up 20-25% of the population. We're
It's a
huge if we want to be.
it's a
And that
difficult problem though because as big as we are, just like the disabled minority, um, I mean, first, where we should just address everything all at the same time and just try to get this shit right. But again, what's right? What's right? Probably not the definition according to me. But I think if we all talk, we can come to like a fair, equitable solution. But the point being is, what is disabled rights compared to like women's rights, compared to like the rights of gay people, the rights of trans people. Like
We're
there are other
25%.
there, the rights of racial minorities. Like there are other huge groups that even fall within our minority. Because they
Yeah,
do overlap. Like there's like all these people can have disabilities as well. Um,
exactly.
the the thing is like we are all equal. If you're a human on planet Earth, we are equal. We are all brothers and sisters in humanity. That is where the line should be drawn. In that, if there is some feeling of inequality somewhere, you
Mhm.
should be allowed to voice that in a public space. And I mean, currently it does protect our right too, but in an effort to bring about some change, and the way we do that is by speaking together, and by continuing to have the conversation together,
Yeah,
and also speaking about our experiences, telling our stories. The Disability Diaries was the first draft of the Americans with Disabilities Act, and it was um, like group of stories tied to the legislation written alongside that demonstrated the inequality that was being experienced at the time by individuals with disabilities. Now, I read about stories of inequality every day. I
yeah,
experience some of them firsthand on a daily basis, and it it has to change because while this stuff is still happening, not and I'm not like it's not like a person something on my personal agenda that I'm trying to talk about for myself, but because I know so many other individuals that struggle and deal with these struggles and deal with this inequality and this unfairness every day too, and I want to protect and try to help out every other disabled individual that will come after me as well. Um, so
I hear
um,
what you're saying, Tom. For me, you all of you guys know me, and for the audience out there watching this, I'm an SEI walker. I walk really well when I wear leg braces. I walk so well I can hide my disability. People will assume I'm able-bodied, or I just have a little limp or something like that. I can do a lot. I have actually gone and interviewed for jobs. I don't know if I want to name names and demonetize, uh, you know, Shawn's YouTube channel or anything like that. But I have no problem naming names if Shawn doesn't care. But I actually went for an IT
Sorry.
job, and on the first interview, I walked in. Employer loved me, thought it would be a great fit. This is good. Come back for a second interview, and we'll have you meet the boss and all that, and your team you would work with, and see how well you guys click. Second interview, I walk in, everything's great. Man, this is being awesome, and I'm going to get hired. This is great. So I go in for the last third meeting where we're going to actually sign the contract and do all this other stuff. That third meeting, I rolled in. I'm a roller and a walker. I use my wheelchair for long distances. If I'm tired that day, I roll. If I want to walk that day, I walk. To me, it doesn't matter. But I rolled in a wheelchair. I did not get the job. This is a Fortune 50 company, the major telecommunication company that you've all heard of. We're doing a rollout, and as soon as I rolled in with
hit
there
me
with
with
the,
a name. Like I already screwed new motion. Like let's toss it in the fire, dude. Let's go. Come on.
you want to know who it was?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
really
cool.
curious.
AT&T.
Yeah.
Okay.
Heck yeah.
Down there in Irvine, right where the 55 and the 405 come together.
Now again, like let's be
That building
fair in
right
that
there.
like this could come down to like the personal bias of the individual hiring, the disabled person.
Yeah, it's not on
Now,
the.
Absolutely.
it's not necessarily reflective of the company and their views and their values, but it's
Absolutely.
important to have laws in place when you come across individuals like that do very obviously discriminate, or you encounter something in the workplace
Yeah.
that can easily be addressed and accommodated and they willingly choose to not. It is important why we have the laws and the structure in place to protect, protect yourself. I had an experience too where I went for a job interview and I went to a business park, and the interview was on the second floor of this, business park building or whatever, but it was built pre ADA and there was no elevator and no accommodating services. And I had to ask one of the other interviewees to go up there and tell them that my crippled ass was downstairs. And then the guy who was interviewing me came down and was like, I'm really sorry, dude. Like, he's like, I'm super embarrassed. I was embarrassed. I felt pretty dehumanized, TBH. But he, we had a conversation. Like, he offered to like interview me in the parking lot, but basically told me that like the workplace wasn't accessible and like they didn't really have a means to like accommodate me, in terms of like being in the office. And this is all post COVID, which like or pre COVID, post COVID. I would say that the change brought about in the workplace and the opportunity for remote work is definitely a benefit to disabled individuals, because
Yeah.
that's not really an excuse anymore, for like not having an accommodating or accessible workplace, which is still a surprising number of, in 2022. Um, but I wish I had a better understanding of my rights back then, because I probably would have sued the shit out of that corporation and got
Yeah.
mine in a different way, because that was a pretty shady experience.
Yeah.
Um,
I got my
but
revenge in a different way. I went to work for their competitor, MCI, across the street. So we used to run into each other in the same food court.
oh,
Oh,
Nice.
nice.
wow.
Yep. Yeah, and it was great because at MCI we finished out the rollout of computers 6 months before AT&T even started.
Yeah.
And how I
Nice.
roll said it, name names, put them all on the wall of shame. That's it. Like I will continue to use your business as long as you treat me fairly and accommodate me, and I like what you got to offer. Like
Yeah,
I'll go back to a restaurant if they don't have an accessible bathroom just to get their food if they're nice and they have good food. Like I don't give a crap. Like I'll go pee somewhere else, if I have to. But if you're rude to me and you're unwilling to accommodate me, or you don't treat me fairly, then exactly, like I'm going to hold your name up to the fire. Like I'm going to tell everybody to avoid your business until
yeah,
Yeah.
you change, because hey, this is the world we're living in. You're not allowed to be shitty. I mean, you can choose to be, but it's not cool. It's
But
not
now
You
it's
know,
easy
cool.
to make that stuff public and shame
yeah,
them,
Yeah,
in a
I'm gonna go
public
on
manner.
Yelp
So
and tell everybody about it. And I'm not gonna be like
exactly.
a crazy person, but I'm gonna definitely tell my friends.
yeah.
I kind of want to
It-
go back to what you said, Lewis, though. You know,
mhm.
yeah, you better be nice to me, but also we got to remember to be nice back. You know, Lewis, you said it with, like kind of like with the airport. Man, if you're respectful and trying to say, hey, listen, in a calm, low, tone voice, and just say, listen, this is really uh, this is really not conducive to me. My chair is broken. This is going to be putting me out. These are my legs. And I don't think you understand, and not that you ever have to, and I hope you don't, but we need to get this taken care of today. And then, it goes so far in life. And I think a lot of changes can happen if you are calm and reasonable, and let's have a discussion. You can have a discussion, one on one with lots of people and make a little bit of changes. And I think Kelly said it just right, how I roll. You know,
Mhm.
we definitely need to be in groups. It would be
Yeah.
great. We just need to find that leader, like Julie Newman was back then. She became
Exactly.
the leader, and we in a way we kind of don't have that. And we need it somewhere. and I don't know if it's going to start with you, Tom, or with you, Luis. But
But
I think
yeah, you're
we
right.
just need we need a leader like
Don't
what
dominate. Don't dominate me.
We're,
we need
we're gonna
something
get
like what
Tom
happened in
some
the
tie
'70s
dye
and the '80s.
shirts.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they came together as a community, like we were just talking about, everybody as one, joining together, and they did some crazy cool stuff, and that's the only way we can actually make significant change. Like Tom was saying, no law has been changed since, so I think the only way to do that is, as a community, and maybe
I
organizing with
and I don't think
larger.
it. I mean, I definitely think there needs to be some effort by certain few individuals, maybe more than the rest, to help guide the effort. But the effort is us. It is like the community together. And I mean, the live to roll feeds my soul like in so many different ways. Like just being able to kick it with you guys and hang and talk like we do, and then to like talk with the chat, like make the connections we have, and just all of this. Like
Yeah.
it's so meaningful to me. But also to like have this platform to talk and to tell stories, to hear other
Well,
individual stories, to platform other individuals, and hear about their experiences, and then have this like saved for other people to come back and listen to, and a way to document, preserve it, and to highlight these stories. And I mean, what
mm,
Shawn has started 7 years ago, what he's helped like prop up, with this, and like enable all of us to do, like, bruh, Shawn's over here leading the movement. We live to roll. But what I say, like, don't nominate me if that's what it takes. Like, I mean, I'm gonna keep having this conversation because it affects my life and it's very personal
yes.
to me and a lot of people in my life. But and I do have the ability to talk. I don't think I necessarily have the mantle or the energy to like head the effort and lead it all, but I will put considerable time and effort towards, this using what we have here,
Hmm.
using, this group of amazing people like Brianna and Nikki and Ashley and my mom and my sis and Lewis and Bobby and the whole Literal fam, like everybody, like this is the start of something. This is our Crip Camp, where we meet every week and we talk and we do our
Exactly.
thing. And, this is going to keep growing and it's going to be a conversation. And who knows, maybe one day we will have, enough of a platform and enough of a voice that enough people can hear us and we will one day do this. And hell, like that's like my intention. And not just for us here in the US. I talk about all the time. Like I want to hear about other people around the world live. I want to hear about, the lack of services people, are working with in third world countries and stuff. Like these we're on a global platform. We are living in a time where there are no walls, no barriers between our
Hmm.
communication and between helping one another, at the very least by providing a voice. And I'll be damned, like if that's not what we're gonna do is try to use this platform to, do exactly that, bring a voice to our community around the world until we all are talking together and change is being brought about globally, not just here in the
Hmm.
States. I mean, yo, we should be leading the effort because we have the technology and the tools and the means, but then we should extend that effort everywhere.
When you mentioned globally, I
Uh,
want, and we touched on global earlier, and how you guys were talking about how the ADA should be worldwide, should be a global thing, and it is already is in effect. It's called the International Treaty on the Rights of People with Disabilities.
Yeah.
okay.
So this is an important. Uh, what do I want to call this? It's a treaty. It's just what it says in the title. It's a worldwide treaty, and every country. I think the United States was one of the last countries to sign on to it. And for a while there, the last president we had didn't want to sign on to it, and it was only until I think this last year we finally signed on to it. And for years it was like most of the rest of the first world and civilized countries around the world had signed on to it, and everybody was waiting for the United States, the country that invented the ADA, and we were the last ones to not sign on. Now I think we're on it, which is a great thing. So this is something recent that's going to push forward and help make ADA standards a worldwide global thing for all of us, which is great for all of us in the world, not just the
Yeah.
U.S. countries, but everybody. This is a positive thing that doesn't get a lot of airtime.
And I do
And you
want
know,
to highlight something too, Bobby. I'm going to let you talk, man. I don't mean to cut you off.
go
But
ahead.
you just said this in error earlier. And again, no shade to you, man. But we did make one amendment in 2008. George Bush made an amendment to the American Disabilities Act. And it was broadening the definition of disability,
Oh,
which just was extending that to like a broader populace of individuals affected with disabilities. So it was a positive, meaningful amendment that was made, and an incredible demonstration of the exact kind of change we can continue to make and bring about. This is not something that is just set in stone, being that like times have changed, like we have changed as a people, and the laws should change, in tune with all of us. So I just
mhm.
wanted to say that, Bobby,
No, that's great.
Well,
No,
because
that's
I
good.
think it was
it's just
important.
what
It's good
no, it
enough.
was something I heard and thought that was crazy. And instead of one change, there probably should be 30 of them. And you
Yeah.
know that it is crazy. But there is a voice, though. We do have a group, and you can go to it, and you can have them listen to you. And that for the U.S. and that's called United Spinal,
Yeah.
and they are
Hmm.
fighting very hard each and every day. And the problem is just they don't have the numbers and they're looking for the numbers. They want the people. They need you to sign these things to go off and send off the emails to your Congress and your delicate people. We need this. When I went to roll on Capitol Hill, they're just like, we have a good number, but we need it by double and triple. And if we're
Yeah.
25% of the population, I mean, granted, they're United Spinal Force, spinal cord, uh, individuals, but they're getting a just a nick of what we probably should for what they need for us to
Hmm.
fight for these amendments that we can have two, we can have five, we can have nine, 100 if we need it. We need a new train on the track. We need a new airplane that carries, our wheelchair and a cargo that is protected. We need those, and
I'm
and
so
and
glad you
they can
brought that
start
up,
there.
Bobby.
The Air Carrier Act is that's the number one thing they're fighting for. When I got to go to roll on Capitol Hill, it was beautiful to sit in front of somebody. Granted, it does suck and it is frustrating when you're sitting to one of their members. They're people that just go and listen to you and then take it back if they take it back. But you're telling them like, hey, if I get home, my wheelchair is broken. I don't go anywhere. And he goes, what do you mean? I don't go anywhere. It's not like you. I have my own personal wheelchair waiting for me at the airport because you broke mine. And if you give me one, that means I could get a pressure sore. I could fall out of it. It's uncomfortable. I can't drive from that. Whatever all the 100 things because you broke my wheelchair. And they were just like, "Are you kidding me?" Yes, yes.
It
I
broke
am
your
not kidding.
life.
you know and they're like, oh wow, we need to take this back and let your congressperson know about this. And I'm like, please do. I don't know if it's going to go anywhere, but it was nice to go and do that for at least a weekend, and they
Well,
need
like
more
the
of us.
Department of Transportation in the last, they put out an edict. I think it was 2 years ago or so, that as of when the edict came out, that all airlines have to report broken wheelchairs, which prior to that they didn't. A wheelchair got broken, the complaint form would come through the Department of Transportation, the ACA. They would fix it. That was the end of it, and move on. Nowadays, they have to count and report to Congress how many wheelchairs are being broken by the airlines. And the last numbers that came out was like, there's like dozens of chairs broken every day. There's thousands of them that get broken every year. It's a ridiculous amount.
There are dozens of individuals every day taking Amtrak that experience, like significant amount of human suffering. And that might sound extreme, but it's literally what they're being, like forced to
Yeah,
experience as a result of lack of accommodating services. That's hundreds a month. That's thousands a year, tens of thousands over the last 2 decades. And it's absolutely like unbelievable.
Tom,
It's effed up.
we're on the train. Did you take any photographs of where
Yeah,
you
no,
were
we
at
got
on
a
the
video
train?
coming out. I'm working on it. I'm trying to get it done before Thursday. Keep an eye out for it. It's
Good
gonna be
man.
it's like I filmed all of it and it's highlighting it and it's like I'm trying to like do so it's just next to the laws and it's like, okay, is this not a violation? If not, educate me on how it's not a violation of my human rights and like a violation of the American with Disabilities Act. Like it's crazy. But honestly, public transportation, some would consider a luxury. It's like, hey, you got dealt a shitty set of cards. Sorry. I mean, the problem is even greater than that when it comes to where our rights need to be extended. My mom said in the chat, we aren't even guaranteed access to durable medical, equipment. Like we are not guaranteed access to rehabilitation equipment like wheelchairs, exercise equipment, things that
Healthcare
like
is not a
help
right.
prevent us from getting unhealthy, prevent us from developing issues, as side effects of our disabilities and stuff. Like they basic, you know basic levels of care, basic
Hmm.
levels of human care are not even met in terms of providing reasonable accommodating home health care, reasonable care while traveling, reasonable, services, home modifications. How are home modifications not subsidized by state or federal government for individuals coming out of the hospital after an unprecedented accident and now no longer can access their home? How is that like burden shifted to the individual in the hospital with a disability? It seems crazy to me. And
Yeah.
like,
The, the United States is the only I'm sorry, the only country of our type, a first world country, where healthcare, basic healthcare, is not a right. It's a privilege. And that's a terrible tragedy. That not to be political, not to choose sides or anything, but we literally have people in in our country who are dying, who are
every day.
falling apart, falling through the cracks because we don't offer the most basic level of healthcare without having to jump through all kinds of hoops to get it. You
I
know,
know a number of individuals, their lives were saved by an organization like Triumph Foundation because they were falling through the cracks. And,
yeah,
within months of succumbing to a wound that was going to, make them septic and kill them, or, like be stuck in a congregate home, just declining steadily for, the remainder of their life because these are not reasonable, accommodating healthcare services, bottom line. And hundreds and thousands of people suffer every day as a result of it.
Bobby.
And it's not just individuals with physical
Mhm.
disabilities. There's a giant minority of individuals with mental disabilities as well that honestly aren't even able to advocate for themselves and are not protected and are murdered by our government every day by these lack of
Yeah,
services. I'm sorry I sound like a crazy person, you guys, but it, it sounds crazy coming out of my mouth. It's wild that it's
Tom's
facts.
right. Uh, all of us here in this program on this channel right now, we all live in the Los Angeles area. And downtown Los Angeles has 60,000 homeless people just in the downtown region. 60,000. Of
The
that
majority of which
60,000,
are disabled.
yeah, 4,000 of them are disabled. We know this, that the figures have been counted. There are 4,000 disabled people in wheelchairs in various conditions living on the streets of downtown Los Angeles. And as
It's yeah.
Triumph, we don't have the ability to help them.
I know
We
it's
we
heartbreaking.
we have the ability to help the people that our mission dictates and our donors help us do, but the problem is so much bigger than us. It's bigger than what culture and government and companies can put together and do. It's going to be a moonshot mission type project to fix these things. And the culture, our people have to come together and decide how are we going to go about and do this.
And yeah, that's the only way that it happens is, like at a societal level, because the society has to, hold the government accountable, like us culturally, like the people together, our communities. And, we are all working and fighting together. This fight that we are fighting for, with, for rights for individuals with disabilities, which, are probably a little bit more nuanced than, like a different group minorities, but maybe not even so. They, they are the same kinds of rights. We're talking about human rights here, and human
Mhm.
rights need to be extended to everybody. Now, I mean, that is the greater fight that needs to be had, and I think one that is being had right now by lots of different groups of individuals.
Mhm.
We will continue here at Live to Roll, continue to be a voice for individuals with disabilities. We are, going to continue to represent our community, continue to talk about how we are going to, we can affect change. And, this is it right now, having this conversation, other people listening, having that
Yeah.
conversation again with other people, passing along the message. We're doing more than that though by, creating a permanent space where this can live, and, others can come and listen to it as well. And we will continue to do what we can to, have this conversation as loud as we can until the right people hear it, and,
Yeah.
change starts to be affected. And it's not going to be something that's going to happen overnight. If you
Yeah.
watch Crip Camp, it's a thought that they had for
For years.
decades,
Yeah.
Decades. Yeah.
decades,
Decades.
Yeah,
to
it didn't
get
happen overnight.
the kind of change, and
And they had to fight hard and do sacrifice and a lot of,
And
yeah,
do some of the craziest stuff that we would never think of. I can't
seriously.
imagine the four of us would
They were
say, "Let's
they
crawl
were
up the
laying in
steps."
the streets,
Yeah,
chaining themselves to metropolitan buses.
yeah.
They would
Yeah,
chain themselves to the wheels of a bus. I mean, we don't
Uh,
do that today.
no,
no.
we're not as hardcore as
First thing we would
the
be thinking about is, this might cause a pressure sore. This might do that. I mean, it's just crazy. But that's how change happens. You do have to sacrifice a lot, and
Yeah.
to make the changes, which is not right. It's pretty humiliating, and it shouldn't have to be like that. You're
Yeah.
absolutely right.
yeah,
Nicole in the chat just mentioned her husband being diabetic, and the amount of money that costs for someone who's diabetic to be able to have their insulin, whether it's a pill form or a shot, whatever the case may be, the price of insulin is just insane. It's just like catheters.
Yep.
What are you going to
Something just
do? I always equate insulin with catheters because they're both stupidly expensive if you have no insurance.
As well as medications too.
and you
There's
as
some
probably
people
well
can't
who
get
are
it
as
not
without
gonna.
it.
bowel care and incontinence supplies. I can't even have the freedom to take a shit
Yeah,
without,
Without paying
you
for
know,
it.
fear of like having to pay for it out of pocket.
we,
And
we
like
have to
I will continue to, because like I have the means to, but God, like that makes me freaking afraid if I was in a situation where I couldn't afford that stuff, or I
we have
didn't
to
have
pay
support
for
to,
the
get it
right to
for me.
evacuate ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, crazy.
It's fucking insane.
Um,
Sorry for my language, you guys. This stuff
that's cool,
just like
man.
Shame on you.
pisses me off.
Don't start with me,
So,
Tom.
but yeah, let's. I'm just gonna actually go back. Mason, what's up, Mason in the chat? He said, "What's up, Bobby?" He's having some issues with his chair. Yeah, give me a message, me. We can put you in contact with mobility
Actually,
professionals.
Mason, I'll catch up with Mason and I'll get him. Who's Dean's number and make
Yeah,
sure
Yeah,
that I can
that's
get
what I
him
was gonna
to call you
say.
because I
probably
know Dean's actually
Shawn and
going
I
out
live
there.
closest to Mason.
What's that?
My mom said in the chat the inmates of California prisons get bowel care and incontinence supplies for free. Yeah.
There you go.
Uh,
It's funny the other day just to, make it a little lighter. I don't know, Buddy and I were just talking about, what happened if you ever like just get arrested, to put somebody in, like you, Tom, or myself
I want
getting a
to.
listing
I want
and
to.
being put into it like, hey, excuse me, uh, how are we going to do this transfer? It's not like that. They shove you in there, and then
There-
thinking about doing jail time in a chair, it just I'm just like,
yeah, and
for a
I've heard
little
you're not going
comfort
to get
that I
your chair.
have
You're
in life, I'm
getting,
like,
yeah.
oh
let's
my
let's put
god,
it
I
this way:
know.
the thing about the inmates getting it for free,
It's
it's true. They do get it for free when the prison decides to give it to them, not when they need
Yeah.
it, when they decide to give it to them. So, like,
And
there are prison inmates who have to go to the sink in their cell and wash out their catheters and dry them,
yeah,
pay
and they're not,
someone a
yeah,
little on the
they're
side to
not
get
getting
some bleach to clean out the catheter. Yeah,
My
yes, they
mom,
get it for
like,
free, but it ain't easy.
yeah, I'm not gonna say where she works, but she works in a institution that deals with said individuals, and there are mechanisms for inmates to advocate for themselves to, and again,
Yeah, it's
like
called the
some of these
Well
places are
Handicapped
crazy.
Program.
Like some of these people have done really, really crazy stuff. At the end of the day, they're still human beings. I think they're still extended a certain, level of human rights that we all have. But there are mechanisms even within the prison system to, like, hey, I feel like I'm being treated unfairly, at a detriment to my health. And there are checks and balances even, within those institutions.
Yeah, you file a
Would argue,
602 appeal.
I mean, what happens in prison is fucked up, and we don't need to. It's not great. Don't go to prison, anybody. If
don't
you
go.
end up there,
Don't, don't.
Solid advice for the end of the show, Tom. Don't
There's
go to
no
prison.
such thing as too disabled to go to prison.
Oh
That's a
yeah.
fallacy. It's a
That's
myth.
my uncle was a police officer and had to work prisons for a few years, like early on, and yeah, he told me that they don't care if I'm in a wheelchair. He's like, he pretty much told me, do not go. They're gonna put me in some
they
crappy
don't care if
chair.
you have a cushion.
No,
They don't care if you
no,
have a
that's what he
catheter.
told me. He's like, no, we don't care. I'm like, okay.
Osmonds.
Sean, actually, all three of you, I can already tell you which institution you would go to. There's only one that would take you, and that's
man,
Vacaville, the California Medical Facility in Vacaville. Because otherwise, because all of you use catheters, right?
I mean, I have the
yeah,
super pubic, so I don't know what
Yeah,
the.
yeah, I
they
answer,
send you
yeah.
to Vacaville, CMF.
Okay.
Yeah,
I mean,
Uh,
I'm definitely not gonna ever walk the line. I mean, maybe I'll walk the
no,
line, but
it's
try
not
not
worth
to
it.
cross it when it comes to staying within the bounds of the law. Um, but that being said, don't mess with me or my family because I'll come at you. Just
Yeah.
kidding.
All right, guys. Should we start to wrap it up? We've been going a little bit. We're getting close
Yeah,
to. Bobby's probably got
we
to get
gotta
going here
let Bobby
too.
go.
I got to pee like a racehorse now.
Yeah.
Just after we started talking about catheters, all of a sudden, like, oh yeah, that's right.
Don't you hate it when that happens?
Yeah.
Happy July 26th. Happy Disability Pride Month. Let's
Oh,
all take today to remember the, writing of the American with Disabilities Act into law and what that meant for our community. And let's carry it forward into the future and continue to fight, and extend our human rights until we are, treated equally and, normally, within our communities and societies and culture, because things aren't equal and fair right now, and we got to keep advocating, fighting until they are. So we appreciate you guys for listening and hanging through. I know this is maybe not one of the funner episodes, but a super, super important one. Lewis, thank you for being our guest today, man, and coming in with
anytime.
your unique, experience. I know you've been around the block with this stuff, and we really, really appreciate your stories and hearing about your experiences before and after. ADA.
I just want to
Yeah.
say one thing before we end this is anybody watching who's never seen it before, today, tomorrow, this week sometime, please go watch Crip Camp.
It really is
Yeah.
a really good. It's good. And yeah, it's a great documentary, great people, and just it's really informative. If you're in a wheelchair and you're living the disability of life, like it's information you should know. Like
And
Tom said.
plus,
So.
we're bringing back the summer camp. That's how it's going to start again. Is
I am
we're
down
gonna
for
get
that
it.
summer
But
camp.
it's
Let's
gonna
do
be
that.
like a summer camp. Like
Live to Roll
empowering
Summer Camp
everybody.
2023.
But there's also gonna be like a Woodstock, like adult music vibe element to it, where we're just gonna like party for a couple weeks to like raise money and awareness. It's gonna be a good time.
Bro,
Give
I'm
us a
telling
couple
you, let's do
years
it.
to figure out the logistics, but
Maybe
I
not
really want
2023
to.
then. Live to Roll 2024 summer camp. It's coming.
Um,
Yeah, you got some ambitions there.
but why not? But why not? I mean, let's meet and
We,
this third week in July,
we can have
to
it at
like,
Camp Cucamonga.
Let's do it.
commemorate this, and then to have a platform for our
Maybe
voice
we
and
can
the rights we need
coordinate with
to
our Canadian friends
continue.
up there that did the reinventing the wheel because they kind of do some cool camping stuff. Man, we'll get
Well,
a
how about
cross border Canadian and U.S.
I'll
super
talk to
camp.
United Spinal too, because
Work
we should be
work
talking to
with
them.
something that already exists. Okay, boys.
All right.
Tom, Bobby,
Hey,
Rancho is
Live to
hooked up
Roll
with the
already
camp.
exists, baby. Let's go. That's all we need.
Rancho's hooked connected with that camp in Durango, Colorado. Do you know which one I'm talking about? Are you heard
Yeah,
of it?
for our outdoor adventures. The
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sierra, what's it called? Sierra. No, that's up in Mammoth. I know what you're
You
talking about. Yeah.
you Stark does Land Meet Sea, or they have in the past, which always
yes, they
happens
do.
right around this time of year. I think within these weeks. And you are right, Lewis. And that's like the beautiful thing about this is like we are not just Live to Roll, but we are an entire community that spans around the world, and
Yeah,
we can all come together and utilize the
Work with each
platforms
other,
and the
benefit. Yeah.
resources we have now to lift ourselves up and to become something greater,
U
and
Stark would be a
provide
great
our
one as
voice.
well.
So
You're right.
that's what we're gonna keep doing. That's what we're already doing, but we're gonna keep doing. And yeah, y'all are gonna be a part of it. We love you guys. Flying out to
And
Houston next week. We're gonna have a short show on Tuesday. Getting ready for our flight. Maybe
yeah,
not short, but we'll see.
no, yeah. Well, we're gonna do next week is actually well, if my guest is still coming, we have a stretching and like health type show, which
Oh,
I
heck
need.
yeah.
I'm gonna get some good stretching before our flight and trip. So, uh, but yeah, stay tuned, guys, because me and Tom are flying together to Houston a week from tomorrow, and so
Yep.
far we have no help coming, and it's gonna be a mission.
Well, we do have help.
But
We are going to
we have
help each
help once
other,
we're there.
and
We'll
we
have
have
help. We have help in
some
Houston.
help
We just got to
coordinators
get to our
there.
We got to get to our hotel from the airport. Yeah.
Rumor
So
And
has it that Southwest Airlines is going to strap them both to the fuselage.
that sounds cool.
That would be an awesome ride. Make sure you
uh,
get the GoPro mount.
Hey,
I'm telling you, this is
Sean
my
and,
first. Go ahead.
Sean
Go
and
ahead, Bob.
Tom, maybe look into if Super Shuttle they have accessible vans. It's just an option maybe in Houston. I don't know if they
I
have it
actually
in
call.
Houston.
I actually was trying to look up Super Shuttle because I found a
Yeah.
website. I don't know if we should still be talking about on air or whatever. We can get off.
Yeah, now
But
let's
there is a
talk.
website for
Let's wrap
Houston
up and talk about
for
this.
people that
Yeah.
want to know.
All right, guys.
There's a website out there. But anyways, we'll see you guys all later next week. We're
That like
talking
button.
about Houston next week again. Check out our sponsors. Live to Roll, everybody, and yeah, we'll see you again.